1999 inductee Sophie Tucker, Russian immigrant and longtime Hartford resident, whose celebrated 50-year career took her from vaudeville to Broadway, Rathskeller to command royal performances, was known as the last of the Red Hot Mamas. Tucker shilling with the likes of W.C. Fields, Will Rogers, Eddie Cantor, and Fanny Brice.
Some of these days you'll miss me, honey. Some of these days you'll be so lonely. You'll miss my hugging. You're gonna miss my kissing. You're gonna miss me, honey, when I'm far away.
Sophie Tucker was born in 1884. Her mother was 17 at the time, and she was traveling from Russia through Poland to escape to America and meet her husband, who had run away from being conscripted into the Russian army. His name was not Abusa, which was her maiden name. It was Charlie Kalish, and he took the name of an Italian soldier who had died, who was a friend of Charlie's. The family did come to America, moved to Boston, and then when Sophie was about 8 years old, they came to Hartford. Her father opened a restaurant on Front Street, and Sophie, even back then, used to sing for tips. She loved to sing, and she started to develop that very brash and brassy personality of hers. There were a couple of theaters right in the area, and there were some very famous people who used to come down to Abusa's to see her, or to eat, actually, and they heard her sing, and they urged her to join the Yiddish theater. But that was not what she wanted. She wanted the American stage, and that's what she went for, ultimately. When she was 16 and had just graduated from the Brown Street School in Hartford, she eloped with a young man who was named Louis Tuck. He was very handsome, but I understand he wasn't able to earn much of a living. They very shortly thereafter had a child whose name was Bert. And after a short time, Sophie decided that she had to leave home and she had to go to New York to try to make her career. That was a terrible thing, to leave a child with her parents, but that was what she decided that she had to do. Sophie moved to New York, where she started singing in cafes and restaurants, literally singing for her supper. She wasn't particularly attractive, and she was a little on the gawky side. And the only work that she could get initially was as in a blackface, as a blackface singer. It was something that she had to do for a while, and then she was gradually able to work out of that, and she was picked up finally as a small player in one of the Ziegfeld Follies. I think it was 1909. And a very funny story about that. She was on for 6 minutes. She had a number that lasted for 6 minutes while they changed the sets behind her. And the audience loved her, and they kept her on for 12 minutes, which was fine with Sophie, but not so fine with the stars of the Ziegfeld Follies, and the two women had her fired, and she never worked for Ziegfeld again. When Sophie left the Ziegfeld Follies, William Morris, who was then a booking agent, recognized her potential star quality, and he put her under contract and began to promote her. And within a couple of years, she was a headliner. It was just about that time, I think around 1911, that she recorded the song that was to become her signature number, and that was, of course, Some of These Days.
Some of these days you'll miss me, honey. Some of these days you'll be so lonely. You'll miss my hugging. You're gonna miss my kissing. You're gonna miss me, honey, when I'm far away. Said I feel so lonely for you only, 'cause you know, honey, you've had your way. when you leave me. You know it's gonna grieve me. Gonna miss your big fat mama, your fat mama, some of these days.
Sophie was a very smart lady. She knew what she wanted to do, and she had a sense of how to go about doing it. She did her homework. Her costumes, she paid special attention to. And if you remember just seeing her on television, I remember seeing her on television with the Ed Sullivan Show. The costumes were just beautiful. She always dressed wonderfully with big brooches and lovely beaded and feathered dresses. It was exciting to watch her, and she was very much in control of that. And even with her songs and her repartee, her patter, it could be a lot of double entendre, but very often she had a point to make about women and their lives and her life and how she was living it and what was important and what she was finding out. She chose her songs very carefully. She knew what her audiences wanted, and she gave it to them. When she performed in clubs and on Broadway, she might be very raunchy in person, but when she appeared before the King and Queen of England, as she did 3 times, or more than 3 times, but she did it before 3 generations of royalty, she was the only American performer to do that. She knew when to watch her tongue, and she knew how to behave. She wanted to come across as a class act. More than just about anything, Sophie really understood the meaning of the Hebrew word tzedakah, which means charity. And through all the years that she was a star, she contributed to worthy causes all over this country, and most particularly here in Connecticut. She came back to Hartford often. She came back here every year to celebrate, to observe the High Holy Days with her family. And she was very instrumental in supporting a charity which her mother was one of the founding members of, and that was I believe it was called the Hebrew Ladies Old People's Home. And for many, many years, she supported it and helped to raise funds for it. She also came back in 1955 and was responsible for helping the Hebrew Home to raise, I understand it was $1 million. It was an enormous amount of money at that time, as it is now. She also came back and did a fundraiser for the Emmanuel Synagogue in 1960 when it was being built, and the stage there is named after her. So she was extremely, extremely charitable, and it was her goal to donate of her own money $1 million. That was one of the goals of her life. And when she died, she had donated $2 million. And that was not counting the monies that she had helped to raise through fundraisers. It was a very important part of what made Sophie the real person that she was.
I remember a story many years ago when I was a young girl. Sophie Tucker came to visit us at our house in Hartford, Connecticut, on Manchester Street off of Blue Hills Avenue. She drove up with a chauffeur in a big limousine, and of course all my friends were standing outside very impressed. Came into the house with a big dog, her beautiful big, I don't recall what kind of a dog, but it was a beautiful dog. And we love dogs in our family. And we were sitting around talking in the living room, my mother, my dad, my brother, a few of my mother's friends. The dog picked himself up, went into the kitchen, jumped up on the sink, and either with its paw or its snout, I don't remember, turned on the water and took a drink. Well, we were hysterical. We thought that was really clever. But after all, who else but an actress would have a dog that would do a thing like that?
Sophie Tucker will be remembered not only for her talent, her diligence, and her resourcefulness, but also for her stupendous heart, her generosity, her love of people, and her intense loyalty to friends and co-workers.
Gonna miss your big fat mama.